Oh, let's start with Manchester United, though, and the ongoing situation surrounding Marcus Rashford is dominated the window, and it looks set to continue for this final week. The forward has not been in a Premier League matchday squad for nearly 2 months now, and last night Amorim was scathing about his level of effort, claiming he would rather put the club's 63-year-old goalkeeper coach on the bench than the forward.
It's always the same reason. So the reason is the training, the way I see what a footballer should do in training, in life, and is every detail. So if things don't change, I will not change. It's the same situation for every player. If you do the maximum, if you do the right things, we can use every player. Today on the bench, we miss a little bit like pace to go, to change the game, to move some pieces, but I prefer like that. I will put Vital before I put a player that don't give the maximum every day. So I will not change in that department.
Wow, pretty damning words, really. He's never gone that far before, and he pointedly picked it out, his goalkeeper coach there. When you hear that, is there any way back for Marcus Rashford now at Manchester United?
It's looking increasingly difficult. Of course, with what can happen with the contract situations and the fees and numbers that are involved in trying to make this deal happen, we're always going to be tough. When the manager is coming out so publicly as well, at a time when Marcus Rashford is looking for a challenge elsewhere, they are very, very damning words. They really, really are. And he's making it clear that he's still not seeing from Marcus Rashford what he believes is the right attitude, the right application, the right intensity in training, the right way of doing things. And I was quite surprised to see Ruben Amorim go down that line again. I mean, it's very obvious that Marcus Rashford's not in the squad. He's not going to be in the squad until something is sorted out. So to go that strong, especially after offering up the headline that he offered last week, which we were all talking about,
hasn't he?
He's now dropped another nugget in, and it was the last question of the presser as well. And Manchester United had won the match. So I'm not saying he's wrong for doing that. It's clearly his observation, but it's another damning indictment from the manager in terms of where Marcus Rashford's head's at right now and how he's coming across in training.
The thing is, though, Dan, he doesn't seem to be any closer to leaving. We heard a few days ago now that it's getting more complicated for Marcus Rashford to leave in January. What happens if no club comes in with a viable offer before next Monday night?
Well, from what we've understood this whole window, Marcus Rashford would be happy to stay at Manchester United and continue to fight for a place. We've seen him on social media when they have won games or even before games wishing the team luck. But I do think it's worth just recapping that this isn't just based off what Ruben Amorim has said just last night. I mean, Marcus Rashford did start the first 2 games under Amorim's reign. We can see there him again congratulating the team after that Fulham win. But as I mentioned, he started the first 2 Premier League games under Amorim. He then came off the bench in the following 2. But then he did that interview with Henry Winter saying, for me personally, I think I'm ready for a new challenge and the next steps. He hasn't featured since then. He was on the bench in 1 game but didn't come on then. So there is kind of a precursor to everything that's happened since that interview. That's when he hasn't been involved since. And what Amorim is saying, and he'll argue that what he was talking about yesterday applies to every member of that squad. He needs to see commitment. He needs to see that every day in training, on and off the pitch. And clearly he's putting a message to the whole squad, not just to Marcus.
What I do find really interesting as well, though, and is it counterproductive? I'm not sure, but it's just an observation that Marcus Rashford being in this present moment of not producing the goods, apparently to Ruben Amorim, he's still training with the first team.
Yeah.
He hasn't
been exiled.
It's not that, well, it's such a bad impact on the rest of the group with what I'm trying to build here. We already don't have time to train as it is. So why am I going to have somebody like Marcus Rashford in this mindset in and around the first team? He's not ostracised him. He's not put him to train by himself or with the younger players or away on individual training, which I do find interesting with that level of criticism where you're not making the matchday squads, but you're still deemed professional enough to be around this setup as the team's trying to move forward. That was an interesting observation. And is that the hierarchy from Ineos saying, you can't go too far because if we have him ostracised, then it's more difficult to move him on. But at the same time, Ruben Amorim's also coming out publicly and saying what he's saying, which he's right to, because that's his observation. But for him to still be in first-team training, how bad is it? So it's another mess. Yeah, it really is.
It could get messier. I want to bring Molly and Manny in on this, because if Rashford is going to get his move in January, clearly some compromises need to be made. But where do those compromises need to be made, and by who?
I think the compromises need to come from all parties, to be honest, Matt. You know, from Rashford's situation, he needs to realise that his future actually could still be at Manchester United beyond this transfer window, and then as a result, he wants to be playing football, surely. So the best case scenario is to put the effort that Ruben Amorim wants into training to be able to play for the club and have a future footballing career at the club. Then from Manchester United's perspective, you'd think that really they need to compromise maybe on his wages. We know he's on a big wage at Manchester United. Then if he were to move to another club, could they look at how that wage proportion is spread between the club and between Manchester United? We've seen it with Real Betis and Anthony. They've got Real Betis to pay 84% of Anthony's wages. That is a huge proportion and a phenomenal deal from Manchester United's perspective. With that, if Anthony performs individually and as a team at Real Betis, then United will reap the rewards of profit from that wage. Clearly, then, individual performance will be a big part of his future too, Manny, should he move on. And we know that that player is still very much in there for Marcus Rashford. He could perform at another club.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, Rashford, over the last few seasons, has had one really big season. And although in that time there's been different managers, different positions, he hasn't been able to recapture that form, which is the big issue. For him now, clearly, you can see there's a breakdown in the relationship between the manager, the club, everything. I think it's right time for him to move on. And obviously, if they can get the finances right, like they did with Anthony, I think now's the time, get it done. And if he does stay, he has to, like you said, work hard, get back into that thing where you can see he wants to play football. Because for the manager, it must be frustrating. He thinks he's turned up to training, smiling, getting on. The manager wants to see more effort. They're in the middle of a season and in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah, and this is only 2 or 3 years ago, this season here. 17 goals in the Premier League, albeit 35 goals in all competitions just a couple of years ago. So that player is very much in there. Marcus Rashford just needs to maybe apply himself and then in turn feel loved by a club. But 7 days is a long time. Who knows what will happen by this time next week? Will Marcus Rashford still be at Manchester United? That is the question.
Yeah, that is a big question. Thank you very much, guys. The thing is with Manchester United is that Marcus Rashford's future isn't the only thing on the agenda at the club. Alejandro Garnacho's future also remains unclear.
Nobody knows. Anything can happen. But I count with Garnacho, and he's improving in every department of the game. The understanding of the game when they defend. I'm trying to find the best position for him. Today he play a little bit more open, not so much inside. So we need guys with 1-against-1. But like I say, I don't know what is going to happen until the end of the window.
Right, interesting comments. And we're also hearing just now that the future of Garnacho holds the key to Manchester United's dealings in this transfer window. And it could be a knock-on effect, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in terms of Garnacho, as I said, not exactly a ringing endorsement that from his manager that it will stay, was it? We know that Napoli are interested. There's a gap in valuation, though, in terms of Napoli and Manchester United. Chelsea are also interested. Marcus Rashford is now looking harder to shift, isn't he, in January for United? Do you think there's a correlation between those news and now, all of a sudden, these Garnacho rumours are just getting stronger? Absolutely.
I think Garnacho is that domino that, if that falls, you will see the rest. Because you're looking at Manchester United with not much flexibility in terms of finances in this window. We're looking at Patrick Dorgu potentially coming in as a knock-on effect from Anthony, so that's not really anything to do with this. If Manchester United want to do anything else serious within this window and get Ruben Amorim some players who maybe fit his system and further develop the squad, Garnacho's going to have to be a big part of that, and that's a reason why he was non-committal. That's a big reason why Ruben Amorim was saying anything can happen in this window. We don't know. But also what's happening is, and I felt this in the stadium in the game against Rangers, that it feels quite awkward with the match-going fans, because the fans were singing his name. He was bright on the ball, and he didn't feel like a player who's been forced out by the manager, having a torrid time. His confidence is not there. He was applauding at the Stretford end. It didn't have that feel of someone who's on his sort of last legs of his Manchester United career, but seems to be in the balance because of PSR, because of Manchester United not having many sellable, tangible assets that they could reinvest into the squad. And now it's a damning indictment on Manchester United's finances that this is where they are, the fact they've got to sell one of their biggest prospects. So I think it's a tough situation for him to be in, but clearly Ruben Amorim has been told this is a possibility. This is a possibility, but he's also talking about the improvements that he's making. And more importantly, he's continuing to pick him. Ruben Amorim's clearly shown us, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're not going to play. You're not even going to be on the bench. So the fact that Garnacho keeps playing shows me and a lot of Manchester United fans, and probably shows Garnacho, that he does believe in him, but at the moment, it's a possibility.
Yeah. Just want to pivot slightly over to Chelsea. Why would Chelsea want Garnacho when you look at what they've got?
It is very interesting because, of course, they have so many options out wide, especially the likes of João Felix, Pedro Neto, Noni Madueke, and Jadon Sancho. But actually, when you look at the numbers in the Premier League, combined all 4 players in the Premier League, you're looking at 11 goals and 10 assists. 7 of those have come from Noni Madueke himself. I think you look at Felix, it probably hasn't quite worked out once again this season in the Premier League so far. Pedro Neto hasn't really shown those numbers that he previously has shown at Wolves. But then you'd also argue Alejandro Garnacho isn't necessarily guaranteeing you those numbers either. So perhaps Chelsea are looking to continue a younger profile of player in their squad and probably fits their system a bit more, being an out-and-out winger. I think the question really is that Christopher Nkunku, and I'm sure we'll talk about him soon, but really does he unlock a lot of these transfers, because he's the one who's not playing all that much at Chelsea. We'll have to wait and find out, but I think there's a few wingers there that Enzo Maresca will want more production from.
OK, well, let's talk about Nkunku then, because he is a potential Manchester United target in the window, although they will not meet Chelsea's £70 million valuation of the forward just yet. Again, this obviously could be something that happens straight after Garnacho, if that deal goes through. Just want to get your thoughts on Nkunku, you know, and how he would fit into the Manchester United system, to the Ruben Amorim
honestly,
system.
You couldn't write this. On a personal, listen, I'm so neutral. I have no idea why Chelsea want Garnacho, I'll be honest. Right. They need a goalkeeper. They need help in midfield. They need competition for Nicholas Jackson as a out-and-out number 9. So as a neutral, I have no idea why Chelsea would entertain 60 million north for Alejandro Garnacho, but that's a Chelsea issue.
Do you think Nkunku going the other way is a better deal for United?
Nkunku going the other way has some pros and cons. The pros are he fits the system instantly better than Garnacho does. Him playing as a left 10 or a right 10, that's cash money for Nkunku. That's what he's made his career off. He's a very talented player. He's 27 years of age. He's in his prime. The problems are injuries since he's arrived here. He missed 48 games via injury last season, 22 injuries, 22 games out the season before that. Difficult position, but alone a short-term option to the end of the season with maybe an option for Manchester United would probably help. But Manchester United, in my opinion, should not be committing significant funds with a big contract, lengthy contract, to somebody who's come to the league, and especially with what's happened with Mason Mount as well. Chelsea probably saw a trick come in there. I think it'll be naive of Manchester United to offer Nkunku a big contract.
More likely a loan.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be fine.
I think it's kind of what we were saying a bit earlier in terms of a chain reaction in the transfer market. And I think one thing is clear is Chelsea are looking to bolster their options out wide, because we know they have an interest in the young winger at Bayern Munich, in Matthias Tel, who is a very promising young attacker. Now, whether he wants to stay at Bayern Munich, that's kind of what we're hearing, is he wants to fight for his future under Vincent Kompany. But it's kind of, does Nkunku, he's also been linked with a move to Bayern Munich if Tel was to leave the club. So we're kind of waiting for a chain reaction to happen. But I do agree, really what we're talking about in this transfer window is profile of players fitting different clubs. Nkunku on paper absolutely fits what United are trying to do, perhaps compared to Garnacho, just in terms of being in a 10, being in close proximity in those close spaces. and perhaps as a profile, he would fit Chelsea a bit better.
Yeah. OK, well, listen, that Garnacho deal, potential deal, possibly him leaving Manchester United, could be the start of the domino effect. Another line for you, and this could obviously be affected by the Garnacho situation, is that talks have taken place with Lecce over Patrick Dorgu, the left wing-back, but there is a gap in valuation at the moment. The Lecce president has reiterated the club's desire to keep him. However, if Dorgu does join, it would allow Tyrone Malacia to go out on loan.